Greetings and salutations. Welcome to this episode of Playwright Spotlight. Before we begin, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment down below, and share the show with a friend. If you're listening to us on your favorite podcast platform, be sure to leave a 5-star review and subscribe to the channel. My guest today is a Brooklyn-based playwright, screenwriter, and librettist who's been produced in the U.S. and internationally. His plays have been developed and presented with Asolo Repertory's Unplugged New Works Festival, the Barrow Group, Denizen Theatre's new play development series, ANDTheatre Ensemble Studio Theatre, and the Short and Sweet Play Festival in Sydney and Melbourne. He's been a finalist for the Heidman Award, Lark Playwrights Week, and P73 Playwriting Fellowship. His play SMITHTOWN was featured in River Styx's 2025 Posthuman edition, and his play UPSTATE, initially commissioned by Denizen Theatre, was presented in the First Look series at the studios of Key West in 2024. He made his Off-Broadway debut in 2012 at Walker's Space with Out of Iceland. Other plays include Touch and The Anniversary, which is published in Vintage Press anthology of new work, Shorter, Faster, Funnier. He wrote the book and was co-lyricist for the musical The New Peggy, as well as the book and co-lyrics for the satirical holiday show The Bestest Office Christmas Party Ever. Residencies include Degeneracy, and I probably botched that pronunciation, Key West Literary Seminar, Studios of Key West, Telluride Playwrights Festival, Derry Hollow, and Hawthornden Castle in Scotland. His new play, The Cannibals of McGower County, the first in a 3-part trilogy about the South, premiered at TheatreWorks Hartford, will premiere at TheatreWorks Hartford in Connecticut on August 6th and runs through August 30th. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Drew Larimore.
Hi, James. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Well, thanks for reaching out. That's quite a portfolio.
Well, you read it all. A lot of people skip over a few things, but
well, there were a few things I did cut out. I'm like, my God, this is a lot. Which, good for you. Congratulations. But based on our exchanges over the last couple weeks or so, let's get right to it. First of all, you had to deal with the fires, but then you were given a bunch of rewrites last week.
Yes.
Now you open very soon. You previews are the 30th.
That's right. And then we open August 6th. So yeah, coming right up. And
so how is that? And it didn't sound like it was just one or two. It sounded like there was a litany of rewrites that were given. How is that? Or maybe I'm wrong. I might have read into that. How is that like a week before previews?
I would say it wasn't quite a litany. I mean, it was just covering a few really important parts of the play that needed some fine-tuning, which you really don't see until you get something up on its feet and watch it over and over and over again, in rehearsal. So right. There were some critical moments that needed a lot of attention and a little bit of redirection. So that comes with the territory. I think we're about done with that now as we head into previews next week. But
so let's unpack that. I'm really curious about what those are like. Being in rehearsals and seeing these things, and what kind of logistics did you have to juggle, or what were the things that you had originally written that when you started rehearsing and realized, oh wait, wow, holy moly, holy crap, this doesn't work, or this. I got to fix something here, right?
Sure. I think it partially rests on the fact that the play is very psychological. I mean, it sort of starts out in a very specific way as two women salvaging an abandoned barbecue restaurant to sell items on Facebook Marketplace. An unexpected family member comes in, and then secrets are sort of unraveled. So it really revolves around a mother-daughter relationship that's very psychological, and fine-tuning some of those moments are really nuanced. And, we have 3 weeks from first rehearsal until previews. I mean, we no one has a lot of time to do this. So a lot of things don't come to light until people are off book into the second week, So I don't think it's that uncommon, but luckily they were quick fixes, and I really enjoy doing things like that last minute. I kind of thrive off that adrenaline.
So what were some of the things that you found that needed fixing for, or that you ran into that you realized that you need to expand on?
Well, I don't want to give away some twists and turns of the play and give away too much, but
Sure, 100%.
I think intention, I think clarity, all of those things sort of come to light. I think a lot of it rested actually in the third part of the play. The play's in 3 scenes in basically real time. I think they could be almost considered 3 different acts. So in Act 3, where things really bubble to a head and kind of get a little life and death in terms of the stakes,
Sure.
really needed some fine tuning to make sense of those moments.
Okay, so basically it's okay. So it's really in order for this twist to happen, there's a little bit more information that's needed to be garnered.
Yes,
okay, fair
absolutely.
enough.
Yeah,
Okay.
and then when you're dealing with a character that isn't psychologically well, and we've sort of realized that by this time, again, it's really nuanced, and you don't know until you hear it. So,
okay. So here's the question that I have now as well, is because this is you already know this is a trilogy. Do you already have everything mapped out?
Yes, I would say it's an unconventional trilogy in that it's 3 different plays in 3 different parts of the South. There are sort of connective tissue between the first and the second play. Cannibals of McGower County, which is what's opening, takes place in abandoned West Texas. The second play takes place in the deep South, Georgia, Mississippi, kind of that area. And then the third play takes place in Kentucky, where I'm from, so in Bourbon Country. So the second play is written. We've done a couple of readings of it. Very exciting potential casting with it. And then, so that needs a major rewrite probably this fall. And then the third play I'm mapping out as we speak. But something about that is going to be a really fast process, that third play. I'm not really worried about it. So there is a character in Cannibals that resurfaces in the third play. So it does kind of link more literally, I think, by the end of it.
Bookends, okay.
Yeah.
Why the South and why a trilogy?
Well, I didn't set out to write a trilogy. I mean, it's like a 10-year process, really. But I realized that one play wasn't enough in terms of the conversation that I'm having about the South, Southern storytelling, using the Southern Gothic form and following in that tradition. I think I'm from Kentucky, so I was raised with Southern dialects all around me. And although I don't have one, I do have a fondness for them, and I love the use of language. And there really nothing beats, Southern stories in terms of the way secrets are kept and unraveled. And this particular 3-play series has a common denominator of a Southern matriarch that sort of follows in the Tennessee Williams tradition. That's really fun, and they're very complicated characters. And so really it isn't so much that I set out to write a trilogy. I just realized the conversation didn't end at 1 or 2 plays.
So you alluded to that in the South, secrets kept and later unraveled. How is that? How do you use that in the realm of playwriting?
I mean, from the moment the lights come up, there's nothing more interesting than a character keeping a secret and us knowing it. And then slowly that sort of unraveling, whether that's super confrontational or a little more passive. I mean, secrets are kind of never ending. I think family secrets are really complicated and dramatic. And I think they just follow in that really rich tradition. I mean, and you can, in 95 minutes, you can really unravel a secret, and it just often isn't just one secret. It's interconnected secrets that sort of piggyback off of one another. And from a dramatic perspective, that's really fun.
So how I want to unpack the structure of how that works in a play. I'm a huge fan of Ibsen because you open up an Ibsen play and you're already in the middle of something going on and you don't know what it is. So I don't know if it's that same kind of thing. And you said because it's a secret and the audience already knows. So is it the audience witnessing it and that first page, the first 5 page, like, and again, you've watched episodes, so you know that I always put people on the spot with things that you may not be in the middle of right now. So it might be hard to answer, but I mean, you've been doing this for a while. So when you start out, what are the, is there a formula that you follow? Is there a Drew Larimore formula that, oh, this is a Drew Larimore play, I know exactly because this is what he does, kind of like Tarantino or something like that?
Yeah, I think my plays start out one way. They start out typically very funny, and it almost, Cannibals, for example, feels like a play from 20, 30 years ago, starting out in the first sort of 30 minutes. And then there's a very dark turn that happens about 25 pages in, 20 minutes in, and the play really redirects itself. Cannibals is structured in 3 scenes, almost function as 3 different acts, and every time the lights go down and the next scene begins, the play has changed course and it sort of becomes more complicated and darker. So I would say that it's very dark humor, and it gets even darker as the play progresses, and so people are laughing until they're not, and I have a lot of fun structuring that.
Do you always follow a 3-act structure?
No, I don't. But I do like writing things that take place in real time. And so this takes place over the course of a night, and that made sense for this particular piece. But no, I usually follow a 2-act structure.
Okay. All right. And for the 3-act structure, so if you end Act 1, but you say it takes a particular turn, obviously we have I'm just trying to follow like a traditional formula. So just for listeners that might, be struggling with certain things, if, for the end of your first act, obviously it ends with something that has to be resolved. So, and then I'm assuming your second act, the really big climax. Yes.
Yes, I think, well,
how does your first act end without giving anything away, obviously? But I mean, if you, from a structural point, can you articulate that?
It ends in a very dramatic way that I guess the best way I can put it puts characters in much of a thicker, more complicated situation than what was set up 20 minutes prior, and that continues to get thicker and thicker, kind of like they get sort of enmeshed in quicksand, and it really culminates in Act 3, and it sort of not ends before we're ready, but the Cannibals, for example, is described as kind of a wild night, a runaway train, and is kind of over maybe before people are ready. I think resolution is a little overrated, and I think while some things are resolved, I think there is a lot left to the imagination.
So I'm going to just touch on, I'm going to end that structure thing with, I'm assuming that just basically you're just, for the end of Act 1, you've raised the stakes.
Raised.
And then you pretty much doubled up by the end of Act 2. And then, so we can pretty much just kind of assume that it's just basically raising the stakes and then raising them even higher later.
Yeah.
I'm fascinated. I'm really curious. Resolution's overrated.
I think so. Yeah, I think especially a play in real time. I think what can you really say when, I don't know, when things really unravel like that? I think there's a catharsis there that's important, but I don't think that things are wrapped in a bow and neatly tied up at the end of plays, and I'm not interested in plays where they are. I think again, I like ending things really before we're really ready.
This has come up, and I'm just curious. I just want to make a comparison, or just to kind of get open the window into this. Are you familiar with the? It's an old story. I don't know what year. The Lady and the Lady or the Tiger.
Yes. You
familiar with this? Where the guy he's got to open one door and you don't know which one, and then it ends, and you got to figure out which one he winds up going with. So,
right.
Is it kind of like? Do you leave it open ended? No pun
I leave
intended?
some things open ended. I think we're asking some questions about about people's whereabouts and intentions and who knew what when. Some of that is answered, some of it isn't on purpose. But I think what's really cool about Cannibals, again, without giving things away, is that the protagonist is not the protagonist that we start out with. It's sort of a surprising protagonist that's kind of a second character or a sidekick that turns out to really be the one with the journey, which I did not realize until really we developed this with this particular cast the past 2 years, and that became really clear. The play itself is over 10 years old, and it's been workshopped all over in various forms with the same title. But this particular version of the play was written for these four characters, for these four actors, and that was a really cool discovery, is finding out your protagonist is not who you thought.
So why 10 years? Just out of curiosity.
Well, I did not have any control over that. I would have liked it to be sooner.
Well, COVID, I'm sure, didn't help.
COVID did not help. I don't think that there is a hunger for Southern plays in general, based off of what I've sort of experienced. And of course, post-COVID, there was a lot backed up in terms of seasons and things like that. I don't know, but I will tell you that this is the perfect cast at the perfect time. And so I think sure. I think it all worked out the way that it should. I think it took shape when it was ready and when I had the maturity to write this very complicated story. So most plays I find have been around for a hot second before they see the light of day.
But I mean, obviously, this isn't the only piece that you've been focusing on based on your bio.
Right.
I'm sure other plays have been.
Yes.
But so why has this one been so long opposed to anything else you might have put out there prior? Well,
you mentioned SMITHTOWN earlier. That was a play that was sort of created digitally because it's a 4 monologue format, direct to camera during the COVID time, and that was probably 7 or 8 years old. I wrote it on an airplane cross country once, and it just happened to be perfect for the Zoom format that people were doing at the time. So I think a lot of it is timing. I think in this particular case, it was casting. The perfect cast came along, and it was written around them. And I do think that there's something to the Southern thing. Like, I think it's funny that we're doing a Southern play in Connecticut. I was going to say something.
I was going to ask about it. Yeah,
this would premiere down south somewhere, but I think audiences it's a very different world, particularly this world, and so I think they're curious. And the Theatre Works audience here in Hartford is a very adventurous theater-going crowd, which is exciting, which aligns with this play. But I don't know. I will say that the other two in this series are coming faster than that, though, which is great in terms of the story taking shape. So,
describe that for me. The Connecticut market, the Hartford market. It sounds.
Yeah. There's two main theaters here in Hartford. There's Hartford Stage. I think they do sort of more commercial work, and then there's Theatre Works. And sometimes they do productions together. They did a co-production of Sweeney Todd earlier this year, but they have separate seasons and kind of a different palette. And I think people drive in from all over the state to see plays here, and okay. I think that it's a very intelligent audience. I've had the pleasure of meeting the board and attending a performance of English that Theatre Works did last year, which was really interesting, thought-provoking play. I mean, it won the Pulitzer. So I think that I'm excited to get it in front of this crowd, because I think they're going to have a lot of interesting feedback.
You mentioned that there's not a draw was not the word you used, but for Southern plays. Is that because you're doing it in Hartford, or do you find that would that have been different if you were still in the South? And why not put it out to Southern theaters? Or maybe that comes next. I'm just curious what I want to know your thought process in this regard.
Yeah, I can say that this is not the only Southern play I've written. It's not all of my work, but it's at least a third of it, I would say. And I think in general that it just doesn't seem to be, for whatever reason, as appetizing or interesting as plays that take place in New York or other coastal areas. And so it's something I feel passionate about bringing this culture. And, obviously with the South, they're very different cultures. This play takes place in West Texas and Kentucky. I mean, they're all different and the dialects are different.
Sure.
So I really, I don't know. I think that, but in general, I think Southern work has been traditionally second tier, even though it's some of the best storytelling ever. So
sure.
Hopefully this changes that.
No, I'd like to hope so as well, because I gotta believe that there's just some deep, rich history there.
Yes.
I've never been to the South. I've been to Texas twice, and it's not East Texas by any means.
Right.
El Paso and Dallas. So I wouldn't necessarily call it the South, but Louisiana, New Orleans has got to have some deep, rich history in there. So I'm kind of fascinated by the fact that there wouldn't be any interest in that, because
well, I think I'm talking about interest like in New York, or other sort of places where there's bigger productions.
Sure.
I think that particular audience traditionally hasn't been, but hopefully that's changing. This is catching on really in an exciting way here, and I think it will be appreciated because it is different.
So let's talk about that, because I want to know more about your experience as a playwright as far as the smaller markets go, because I think that, and I don't mean this to come off, I hope it doesn't come off as an insult. Like, you're talking about these larger markets in New York and LA and in Chicago, but I think that a lot of playwrights, that's the aim, that's the goal, but sometimes success comes from those smaller markets. And it sounds
Absolutely.
like you've had a litany of success.
Well, I think I'm from Louisville, so the Humana Festival, that is a huge launching pad it was for a lot of writers.
Sure.
So I think there is a very special place for new plays in regional theater. Absolutely. And, Hartford is about 3 hours from New York, so we hope to draw some people from there. But I think that there's a huge crowd in this area alone that really is hungry for new work. I have to really commend TheatreWorks too. It's their 40th season, and they're ending their 40th season with a new play, and a really dangerous, adventurous new play. It's a big honor.
What was that process like? What was it? How did you get involved in
with TheatreWorks? Yeah, specifically, well, one of the roles is played by Constance Schulman. She is known for her work on Orange is the New Black and a bunch of work in New York theater-wise. She's a friend of mine, and so there's a role I've sort of written for her in this that is really cool. And so we were kind of developing it with her, and then she has done plays here back when TheatreWorks first started a while ago, and connected me with Rob and Jeff who run the theater here. So it's been about 2 years of readings in New York, and so this is the first time we've all been together in Hartford as of 3 weeks ago. But it's been a really rigorous developmental process, and it's been very, very rewarding. It's been challenging, but very rewarding. The place had to change quite a bit to make it what it is now.
What are the biggest challenges you guys had to overcome?
I think, we found the right cast, which is crucial. This particular play, the two main roles are older women, frankly, and so that made the casting for that had to be spot on, and thankfully it is. We've got Annalee Jeffries, who's like a Hartford favorite, that is in this with Constance and Edward Hoke, and then Gus Burney round out the cast of 4. And I think specific challenges have been the arc of the play and deciding how dark we want to go funny we want to go. It's really, it's fun to start a play one way and have it end up something totally different, but you have to be really careful along the way. So the psychological elements of the characters has been challenging as well, to write people that are kind of that off their rocker to a certain extent, and make it believable. So the Southern Gothic tone is fun and accessible, but you have to find your way in that keeps people on board for 85, 90 minutes. And
Sure.
It's been a welcome challenge. I've really enjoyed it. And writing a play in real time is a challenge. I mean, I prefer it, but it is a challenge. Writing a play that takes place in real time.
No, 100%. And I want to get into that too, but I have a question first. Because you're kind of, I don't want to say you're working backwards. Traditionally, a play is written, then it's cast. So I want to know, since you're working on how did casting affect the playwriting? If you're saying that, we had to find the right cast, then obviously something had to have changed. You weren't putting it up and then like, I'm going to hold auditions. It was like, oh wait, no, now we've got this cast. So what? Yeah.
And it was a great advantage, I think, to hear their voices as I was rewriting this over a couple of years was, I don't know, it made it easier. I could hear them clearly and where their journeys were going and play to their strengths. And so that isn't always true. That isn't always the case.
Sure.
And I think I was really lucky to have this cast. It's been a very collaborative process, a lot of thoughtful feedback, and it's been a luxury to be able to do that with these people over a couple of years before we jump into this process.
Did the story change based on that?
Yes. Yeah. And I can't give too much away, but yes,
Sure.
The familial structure of it did change, and for the better. And that was really exciting.
Okay. All right. Fair enough.
But you're right. It's not the way most plays work. I mean, it's
100%. And then when you were saying we did a bunch of readings, now are these stage readings with an audience, or is this like, hey guys, let's get the cast together. I made some changes. I updated some stuff. Can you guys come over and let's give it a read? Or are you like presenting it in front of an audience and using audience feedback as well?
It was probably about 4 readings, half of 2 of which were private roundtable readings, and then 2 of which had invited guests. I think we did one last September that was bigger, that was more open-ended. People could just RSVP and come. So it was a mix of both, and having an audience there for that is really important, just in terms of where it lands.
Did you take audience feedback, or did you just kind of just take note of reactions like, okay, that didn't land, this did? And is it fair that if you just did reactions that maybe that was just that particular night, that particular audience?
No, I think particularly when you're working with comedic moments, having an audience there is really important with darker humor. Sure. Because it can kind of go over people's heads. But that was really helpful. And yes, I did get feedback afterwards on little tidbits of things and even larger notes, and that was very helpful. But no formal like question and answer feedback sort of talk back thing. Yeah.
All right. Let's talk about the real time. You said it's difficult. Now, does that assist? This might be just an obvious question, but I'm going to ask it anyways. Do you find that writing plays in real time raises the stakes? It puts more pressure. Pressure is not the right word, but I think you get where I'm going.
It certainly adds momentum.
Sure.
And I think I like that. Yes. And I think you can tell a cleaner I don't know. I get annoyed with like a lot of scene changes and time changes in a play. It makes sense in film, but I kind of like it's a more traditional playwriting device to do, right? To have stuff take place in real time or over the course of a night or a day or two. So I like it. It makes for a cleaner story. It particularly if it's secrets unraveling or truths being discovered, I think that's exciting to happen in real time. You have to raise the stakes to make it make sense, why everything happens, why this night is different from any other night, right? In terms
Sure.
of, so I think that there's some extra legwork to be done on that, but I prefer it, and I prefer plays like that without an intermission. I just think it's more engaging.
Now, even with 3 acts, is there an intermission, or is it just?
No, it's about 85, 88 minutes
Okay.
straight through. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. So are you still doing like a lights up, lights down in between the acts, or is it just
Briefly.
structurally it's 3 acts, but
Yes, no, we are, because I think one is 5 minutes later and the other is probably 15 or 20 minutes later. So there's a very small time change, but yes, it gives the audience a moment to take a breath before we pivot, where again the play goes in another direction and kind of doesn't become something else, but definitely takes a turn that we weren't expecting. And something I'm realizing that we're now in tech is that sound really helps a lot. We have a great sound designer on this that is really shaping it in a way that adds momentum, adds suspense, and helps us stay with it in between those moments.
How much of the sound is in the script, or is it or do you just allude to it, or did you just have a designer that said, hey, this is what I'm thinking, here it is, based on what you have on the page?
Yeah, I think that the world of West Texas and an abandoned ghost town where this takes place in a fictional county, McGower County, is really rich in terms of sound and music, and so our sound designer has just kind of run with that, and I've loved what I've heard so far. There are literal, like, a bell goes off, a buzzer goes off, stuff like that that's in the script, but I think in terms of underscoring monologues, to add momentum, to add tension, that's something that we're discovering as we go along in tech, and that's really exciting. I like that because I work in not as much, but I co-write musicals as well, so I really like music with
Sure.
I like music in live theater. I think it helps a lot, so that's been a lot of fun.
Interesting. Sorry. Somebody decided
I'm glad that was a dog. I wasn't sure who that was for a minute.
Yeah. Somebody decided he needed attention. So, down. So
it looked like one of your books was sort of coming off the shelf. I wasn't sure.
I've got my own little cannibal right here. So what's your definition, and what does dark humor look like? What is dark humor?
Well, I have learned the most about it through reading modern Irish drama, right? I think that this play is tonally its own thing, which I'm very proud of, but has been compared, as we develop it, to Martin McDonagh meets Beth Henley meets a little Sam Shepard, which is a hell of a triad to sort of throw it together.
Sure.
But I think nobody does dark humor like Martin McDonagh, and I think that he is probably informed and shaped my writing more than any writer. And to be honest, the Irish dialect, way of speaking, the way they invert words and sentences is not totally different from what Southern people do with the way they talk. Yeah,
it's fun. It's two conversations in a row where his work has come up.
And he's not written that many plays. I mean, he has probably written 5, 6, 7, or 8, but like he's not like written 20. He sort of went into the film world. So, but I probably reread his plays 2-3 times a year. It's a world that's deeply inspiring and reminds me of Southern Gothic in its own way.
Is that? And I wrote down to ask, and I'm going to assume that he is one of them. I was going to ask you about influences. Who are your?
Yeah.
And I'm assuming he's
definitely. It's obvious if you see this that he's influenced me a lot, down to Body Parts Missing and Cannibals. And I should say Cannibals is not. It's a provocative title, but it's a figurative way of looking at it in terms of the themes involved. It isn't literal cannibalism. It's cannibalizing towns through gentrification, cannibalizing one another, through secrets. I mean, it sort of hits different angles, which has been a lot of fun to sort of unravel, and it's taken some time. But definitely Martin McDonagh, I think. Tennessee Williams, yes, although his work is dated, and Eugene O'Neill for sure, and yeah, I guess a little bit of Beth Henley, but yeah, and Jesse Stewart and some other Southern writers that didn't write plays.
Okay.
Naomi Wallace. I was blanking on her name. She's from
one more time, because I talked over you.
Naomi Wallace.
Okay.
She's been a big influence too. She's from Louisville and has had a lot of work done at ATL, or did.
Is there anything offhand, off the top of your head, that you can say that you use, that you've learned from reading them, that you've kind of not inserted, but that's affected your writing? Like what was it in particular, if anything?
I think in terms of writing dialogue repetition, why people repeat themselves is really interesting, and I guess it's the most interesting to me in McDonagh's work. How people repeat themselves, and then not just repeat what they say, but repeat what other people say, and the different ways in which, or the different reasons why they do that, is real interesting. And it kind of relates to the Meisner technique too, which I like a lot. And so that's a lot of fun, and you can kind of get lost in that. And people do that. I were to repeat what you say, it could be a power play on my move. It could be comedic. It could be a misunderstanding. There's a lot of different reasons why people do that. And so that's been a lot of fun. He's taught me that.
It's funny, because you're saying this, and then and that's again Martin McDonagh coming up. I haven't sat down to rewatch it because I don't have the time. But you're talking about the repetition, and all I can think of is Ralph Fiennes in Bruges. Yeah, with that whole exchange with Colin Farrell.
Yeah.
And where it's kind of the repetition of like asking the question of something that the statement he just made. So it's all right. That's an interesting thing that I don't think I've ever explored in the realm of playwriting, or just ever noticed. So that's kind of fascinating.
It can be really funny, and I think with dark humor, you have to lean into the humor as much as you can. I think in Beauty Queen of Lebanon, for example, I love that play. That was like the first Broadway play I saw, which is sick, but it was. And the way that they repeat one another's sentences in that is hysterical to me. So what's great is you never do that just for one reason. There's a lot of different intentions behind it.
These episodes are going to so contradict everybody, because the conversation we had yesterday was about just like, why are you saying that again? But it's good. People will have some things to learn.
Well, you got to get a handle on it. It can get obnoxious if it's not done carefully.
Fair enough. When it comes to dark humor, how do you know when to pull back? When do you know that you've gone too far? It's like, that's. Mm-mm.
Yeah. I don't know.
Obviously, I'm assuming if anybody walks out, then you realize you've gone too far, maybe, but it's not for everybody. I'm just curious if you keep in mind in the back of your head, like, I could go further with this, but that's going too far.
Yeah, I think so. I don't know about the humor, but I think this has a fair amount of physical violence in it, and I think we've brought in a fight choreographer to sort of stage all of that. This is directed by Jen Wyman, by the way, a fantastic director who's been developing this with me for the last 10 years. So she's a great collaborator and has been a big help with that. But I think in terms of physical violence, in terms of where this goes, it goes to about as far as it can go. I think a lot about what people are willing to sit through, and what they're not, and I take that seriously. I think you can push people's buttons only so far, and if you do, you have to have not grit, but real intention behind it, emotion behind it. I mean, if and that is something I've learned watching this, is that I think in general, maybe too much violence can take away from storytelling, and that's something that I've been really mindful of with this, is for it not to be excessive, and something we've had to really keep a handle on.
Okay, well that makes sense as far as like a physicality goes, but what about subject matter or comments or dialogue where it's like, that's a little offensive, I guess? When there's one way to say things, and I can say it this way, which is going to be much worse. Do you reel it in that regard at all?
Yes and no. I think it depends on what the character would say, and I think in terms of where things go with the way in which they say it, I don't know. I'm not as offended as other people are, so I'm not really sure like where people's radars are. But I think
you don't take that into consideration. You're just like, this is what I wrote. This is how it is, and that's on you. Not you, but like the audience members, like,
Yes, it's a dangerous, adventurous play, and like anything, and particularly with something like Southern Gothic and something that maybe embraces violence more than other things, it's going to be some people's cup of tea, and other people aren't going to care for it. So I think I learned that a long time ago.
Right. So do you find that you have an edit button?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
I do. Very mindful of profanity, actually. I mean, I think that like you have to be judicious with that, and so yes, I do have an edit button for sure.
Okay, just curious.
And also, like, if you're really working with collaborative, intelligent actors, as we have with this, I mean, they're sometimes not comfortable with saying or doing things, or it doesn't make sense, and you know the difference between an actor not being able to pull something off talent-wise versus them saying, this isn't what the character would say, or this doesn't feel right in this moment intuitively. And we've been really blessed with the latter, and I take that very seriously. So
okay. All right. And what about that? Do you take that approach with situations as well? It's like that's a little gratuitous. Obviously we got the gratuity out of the way. You already said it's purposeful and whatnot, but I mean, like with certain situations, it's just like, I don't want to say shock value, but it's like, I'm going to push the limits on this as best I can in that regard.
Yes. And I don't think that, I don't think it's smart to push the limits just for no reason. I think that it has to be integral to the story. And I don't think you really know until you get it in front of an audience. There are moments in this that definitely push people's limits, and I'm curious to hear their feedback. I mean, when you're developing a play for 2 years for a specific theater company, there's a fair number of eyes that are on it, and that will level with you about what is palatable and what is not. And I'm really lucky that the people I'm working with have been doing this a long time, and they know what works and what doesn't.
Have you had those moments with this in the 2 years where the actor's like, you're kind of, that's a little bit much.
Well, I will say that, like, because the play's been around for a while and has had different incarnations, like there was a more literal cannibalism plot line to this early on, and we developed that at Oslo Rep a number of years ago, and their Unplugged series, and I don't care for that. Like, looking back at that, like, I really don't like that draft. I don't think that plot line was important. That aspect of it, it's nothing I would want to sit through. And so yeah, also the luxury of time kind of answers those questions too.
considering that you're doing a week of previews, will you do you do you will you make changes? If or is it like, no, that the play set, we're going to leave it as is. I'm just curious if because now you're going to have an audience, you're going to have reactions,
Right.
and will you use that opportunity to go ahead and okay, this might need to be tweaked a little bit?
Sure. I think anything's possible. I'd love to say no, but it is a new play. This is its world premiere, and so luckily the people I'm working with will be very honest with me about that, and hopefully we'll tend to it if it needs to. But it's in really good shape. I'm really proud of the story it's become. I'm really proud of these actors and Jen, who's directed it, and I think we're spending this week with designers, which is they're all Broadway designers that are involved with this. The set is a character. The setting of West Texas is like a fifth character in the play. So we're discovering all of that right now, and that is really rewarding. So
sure. What I'm assuming that you seek out other submission opportunities. I'm sure you don't just commit yourself just to Hartford. I'm assuming you put your work out there.
Yeah.
In other regards.
Yeah, I do.
And what are your go-tos? Are there certain things that where you find your opportunities?
Well, you find collaborators, and I think that is what I'm looking for. I pride myself on being a strong collaborator, and I like long-term collaborative working relationships, and so I think that is who I connect with. That is who I look for, and someone that really has an eye on development and knows how to speak to a writer. Whether it's a producer or a director, I mean, you know pretty early on in terms of the feedback that they're giving, if they know how to speak to a writer, and if they can't, then you can't work with them. Sure. At least I can't. It's just too irritating. So luckily I haven't really had that, but
I was going to ask, is there any horror stories that you've gotten?
Yes, I can tell one. It was a musical, and these producers just did not know how to speak to the composer I was working with, and they had a note session that they said, can you just make it more beautiful or something? It was so funny and so insulting, and anyway, it led to another project. We sort of jumped ship after that. So
that's fun. I worked. I did a Christmas show for a while, and there was the ongoing joke because all these guys were stunt performers over at Universal, and the notes that they would get is like, "We're not quite sure what we want, but when we see it, we'll know."
Nightmare.
So that's what you just said. Kind of reminds me of that. When you talk about, are you talking just locally, or as far as collaborators go, or do you work outside?
When you have a play produced like this, people reach out to you, which is pretty cool. And I had a director in London reach out a couple of weeks ago wanting to read some of my other stuff. I'm really interested in working regionally, and outside of in New York is inevitable, but outside of New York, this process of doing a play, I've had like premieres in New York Off-Broadway, and it sort of is rushing it. I think it really is invaluable to do something out of town. We're doing this the perfect way, premiering it at TheatreWorks and with this particular audience. So I'm really interested in working regionally, and the feedback that comes with regional audiences, because they're all different.
Sure. Yeah. Do you have a preference between musicals or straight plays?
I think plays I do more of.
Okay.
I do some screenwriting too, but I
Right.
prefer live theater. Musicals have to be I do book and co-lyrics usually,
Right.
and they're usually irreverent, kind of sardonic, a little tongue-in-cheek. The humor is a little different. It's darker humor. I mean, it's dark humor for musicals, but it's just a bit of it. It's a different beast. But there's nothing more creative than putting music to something that you've written. That to write an outline for a song and then have a composer come back with the rough draft of it is just magic. So it excites me in a way that I guess straight plays don't. But I don't know. I mean, I have like 10 plays I think I'm committed to the next decade that I'm really excited about. So yeah.
What does outlining a song look like? I mean, what is that? Like, what are the things that,
I think that people work different. I mean, co-lyric writing is awkward. I don't think a lot of people do it. And I think it can take shape in a few different ways. It's not for everybody. I think it can, I can write a monologue that is half in lyrics, half in prose, and a composer can kind of take that and shape it into something, then send it back to me, and then I make some edits, and we kind of go back and forth, and that's a really cool rhythm if you're working with a composer that's comfortable with that.
How did you get your start in playwriting? Just curious.
I've always done it. I don't really know how. I mean, I had a short play produced in a couple different festivals in New York when I was in high school. So very supportive family. We flew up and saw it, and God, I was probably 15. So I think ever since then, I've and you take breaks from this. You don't totally have the intimate connection that you have with it all the time. But yeah, all my life.
How did you learn it?
By reading. I mean, I didn't major in playwriting. I just sort of have always kind of done it. I don't know. I think it's through reading and trial and error.
And for you, how do you know when it's bad? Your own work.
That's such a good question. How do I know when it's bad? I don't know. It's cool. I'm getting a better radar for what's objectively good and bad now. I don't take things as personally. I think it's just because I've been doing this longer than I ever have. But I think it's just an experiment in human behavior and what makes sense and what doesn't. That's just what I've realized with doing this. It's like it's a very psychological play, and when something isn't right, it's usually because of an intention, a thought process. It's something that somebody wouldn't do in this particular scenario, and it sort of screams at you or screams at somebody else. Sometimes I don't know, and somebody has to like explain it to me. But yeah, it's kind of a feeling. It's like a buzzer that goes off, and then a cringe.
How did you overcome that? Saying that I learned how to take it, look at it objectively rather than taking it personally. How do you? Is there any advice or that you can give? It's like, because obviously we've all been through it. There's always somebody who's got a comment about something that's like, you have no idea what you're talking about.
I know.
Which
I had
sometimes
a horrible.
it's legit. They don't, but
Right.
Then there's those other ones where like, you're right.
I think it helps to be working on multiple projects. I think if you just have one thing that you're working on for forever and ever, you're gonna take everything very personally and be very protective of it. I think for plays to live in the world, they can't really be your baby. They have to then be somebody else's baby and then somebody else's baby, and you have to kind of let go. So I want my plays to live in the world. I want them to be licensed. I want communities to produce them. And I want them to make sense. And so you just sort of put your ego aside and you kind of come to terms with what makes sense and what doesn't. And that phrasing, for some reason, helps me be more objective than what's good and what isn't.
How do you balance multiple projects? Because I think it's great. That's a great approach, but then there's also like, what am I focusing on now? When is it time to work on this?
I think if you can think of it as a revolving dessert tray, and that, time away from something gives you a lot of clarity. So if you're knee deep in a rewrite and it takes you a month, you can be really proud of what you've done. but not be able to really see the forest from the trees with it, and you need to sort of put it away. And if you have a need to work and enjoy that habit, then it's important to pick something else up. And usually I'm ready. Usually when I'm ending a particular draft of something, or I know I'm going to be putting the pencil down with that after a while, I'm already thinking about the next thing that I'm either returning to or starting brand new. And I'm even there now with this. As it gets up on its feet and kind of leaves me, I'm really excited to get to like the draft of the next thing that I'm doing. That's just me, right? That's just my time with it before I have to share it with anybody. So I think it's really healthy. And if you can work in different mediums, it's very healthy to work on something with music, and then go to a really intense play, and then go to something comedic for TV if you can. I mean, I that keeps me sane, and keeps my spirits up.
So with Cannibals, it's a long process, 10 years, as you said. So, but I'm assuming you don't take this amount of time with all of your work. You don't, you're not, we're not using I'm assuming that all of your work is in crocker pot. Versus like crock pot, crock pot, yeah, to where it's like everything simmers. Yeah, with everything I gotta let this simmer.
Yeah, well, everything needs to simmer for a little while. I mean, again, time helps, but no, I think I heard somebody say the other day that a play takes 2 years. I think a really solid draft probably does take 2 years, with some breaks in there and readings. And you have to factor in readings. I mean, you're really relying on other people's schedules for this, sure. for getting something seen, for something to be programmed into a season. It has to be sort of ready to go at least a year in advance. So new plays are expensive. They're a long haul. So they involve other people. So a play can be ready, but it sort of takes other people a minute to catch up to it. And so I would say realistically, you're looking at 5 or 6 years for a project. Musicals take longer. I've had composers tell me it takes 8 to 10. So I'm not even sure that Cannibals is really that different in terms of a case study. But there's an energy behind Cannibals and a voice that I've discovered and harnessed, and a permission, I think, to be bold and daring and adventurous in a way I haven't before, that's giving me motivation and drive to write other things quicker. I don't know. It's a really cool energy.
Do you, when you're considering that, that there's other people involved, and do you always write with that in mind, or do you just write and like, I'll worry about all the other, developers, everybody that's going to be involved later on?
Usually, unless it's a commission, or you're writing for, some of these Southern plays, I'm writing for a specific actress for each one of them. So that is a bit of a different process. But no, I mean, I think for every 10 ideas I have, 2 are written. A lot don't make it to even near the midway point. I write things that will be produced, even if they're challenging. So I'm realistic about what I'm working on, and I'm thankful to have no shortage of ideas. So I think, and I don't write plays that have more than 4 characters.
Why is that?
I just don't. I don't think there's really any room for real arcs beyond that. I mean, even the plays I'm working on now have 3. The next Southern play has 4, and then the final one in Kentucky has 3. And I seem to be on like a 3 mode from there on out. I think for 90 minutes, that's plenty. And again, I like that challenge.
So when you say you write things that will be produced, how do you know that? Like, what parameters are you putting yourself in to say, this is going to be produced, and if I do this, it's not? If that makes sense.
Well, if I have, for example, this is I call this a non-traditional, non-linear trilogy. It is not, it doesn't need to be performed all three at once to understand what's going on. It's sort of structured after McDonough's Lennon trilogy, where they each can stand on their own 2 feet, and that's realistic, right? It's unrealistic to think that you're going to have one play produced, much less 3, in the course of a time period. So yes, I think character count really matters in terms of budgets, and I think relevance of story. Is the story relevant? Does it speak to what's going on now, or can it? And it's interesting. I mean, we've said Cannibals has been around for a while, but there is a working class rage theme to this particular play that is resonating right now with what we're experiencing, I think, in this country. And so I had to write a playwright's note for the program last week, and I was thinking, God, what can I say? Because you have to be really sort of focused for that, because you only get so many words. And that was my takeaway, was why is this being produced now? Because the confrontation, the rage, even just unfortunately some of the violence really speaks to the times that we're in. So a lot of plays have a boomerang effect like that. They don't maybe start out as relevant, and they become more relevant with time. So time is on your side with this. So playwrights, take care of yourself, be healthy, live a long life, so you can see all of these things come to fruition.
With the trilogy, are you using subtitles to kind of connect them? You know, is it like the Cannibals of McGower County, the Cannibals of?
Oh, no, separate titles.
Okay.
But each have, there's reference to characters in Cannibals in the second play, even though it's a different situation. And the third play has one character from Cannibals that resurfaces, mainly because I didn't know what happened to her. I mean, Cannibals has 4 characters, and 3 of them we kind of understand, and their journeys end where they end. But one of them I actually worried about, right? And I wanted to write the rest of her story. So that's why she resurfaces in the third play. But no, they are 3 separate plays that can exist on their own, and I think that's important.
Does the audience need to know that they're connected?
No, they
or is
don't.
It just gonna be like kind of not a happy accident, but just like, hey, okay.
I like them knowing that it's like a footnote. It's worth referencing that it's part of a larger conversation I'm having. Right. But no, they don't. They don't need to know, and that's good.
Okay, all right. And you kind of alluded to it, but what are you working on right now outside of this?
I'm working on the second play in this, which is called The Sterling Sparkler Savior, which is about a fireworks empire in the Deep South. And I'm about 4 or 5 drafts in and about to work on the next one. Theater Works sponsored a table read of it last fall in New York, which was very informative and helpful. So since I'm in that mode, I'm gonna go on ahead and work on that while Cannibals opens, and I'm working on a really different project. I'm working on a kind of a musical review about the connection between love and time, with a composer, Michael Finke, who's great, and we're tag teaming the lyrics. And it's not a traditional book musical. It sort of exists in different vignettes about the relationship of love and time. So It's been a lot of fun to explore.
Great.
Yeah.
And where can people find your work besides at Theater Works Hartford in Connecticut for the Cannibals of McGower County, July 30th through August 30th? Where else can people find your work?
Just keep up to date with me on my website, Larimore.com. I update it regularly with readings and events. And I also have a Substack called Made Manifest. It's at Drew Larimore, and it's thoughts on the writing process and about carrying imaginative ideas into physical reality.
And then finally, are you on the socials?
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram, but I just sort of post pictures of show posters and my dog. But I think Substack, and that's probably a better way to hit me up.
All right, fair enough. Drew Larimore, thanks for coming on this episode of Playwright Spotlight.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Playwright Spotlight. Again, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment down below, and share the show with a friend. If you're listening to us on your favorite podcast platform, be sure to leave a 5-star review and subscribe to the channel. And in the meantime, and until we see each other again, keep writing.